Welcome. I'm Julie Thompson, Executive Director of PACTV, and today we're hosting a COVID-19 update for the town of Pembroke. We're hosting these forums every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. Watch in Pembroke on Comcast Channel 15 or online on our streaming channel by visiting pactv.org/live. To ask questions during the forum, please email them to pembrokeinfo@pactv.org. And for the forum replay schedule and additional Pembroke meeting coverage, please visit pactv.org/Pembroke. Sabrina Chilcott, Pembroke's Assistant Town Manager, will moderate the forum and introduce the participants that are contributing today. Welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I do want to start off quickly by thanking PACTV for all of the work that they've done by expanding their platforms and offerings for time slots. More boards, committees, and commissions are able to meet, and residents are really tuning in. It's been nice. Last night, the advisory committee really got down to some brass tacks on the FY20 and particularly FY21 forecast on revenue and expenditures, and trying to get together with the finance team to start to work their way through it. And that's what you're going to start to see. And it's fabulous. And it's PACTV that made those offerings available. We had more participation last night during the advisory meeting than we've had to date on any of the virtual meetings. And that was nice to see. Folks are tuning in on Government Channel 15, and they're clearly live streaming it on their computers as well. We had some really good questions and input from the public that advisory was able to incorporate in real time to their responses. And I do want to thank you for that, Julie.
That's great. Wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm going to be turning to you for questions shortly. But before we roll right into that, today we're joined by some of the best panelists you can have on a Tuesday. And that includes Health Agent Lisa Cullity, Executive Director of the Pembroke Housing Authority, John McKeown, Council on Aging Director Gretchen Emmetts, and State Representative Josh Cutler. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sabrina.
Thank you very, very much. So the news out of the governor's office yesterday was the tentative roadmap for restoration of services in the Commonwealth, right? So he discussed a 4-phase plan, which was very interesting because he clearly defined that the new normal, phase 4, full speed ahead, would be post-vaccine. And that is one of the things that we haven't seen in some of these other plans. A lot of them are 3 phases, and it's a little vague as to when you could expect a return to what you remember from pre-COVID days. But just to get started, I don't want to, try to use national news or state news to fill our time today. Get right down to Pembroke, what we're hearing from the calls that are coming in and being had every day, multiple times a day with DPH. I wanted to introduce Lisa Cullity, the health agent, to talk us through just the broad blueprint. Lisa, what are you hearing about this plan?
So the governor did exactly kind of what I expected that he was going to do yesterday, which is announce a phased plan. And I know that business owners and people in general are extraordinarily frustrated, and I share their frustration. They want to be back to normal. But there's some really important positive points to focus on what came out of the governor's office yesterday. And that is the phased plan has clearly defined what needs to be done. No, it hasn't defined what business is opening then, and I know that's what everyone's focusing on. But what I'm hoping that business owners, particularly small business owners, are taking away from what the governor did talk about yesterday and what is on the state website today is the clear expectation of sanitation, the clear expectation of workstations, the clear expectation of safety for employees. Because obviously, in order for employees to go back to work, they have to feel safe. Obviously, for the public to start making utilization of these services, they have to feel safe. And that's what I think the governor did very well in that presentation, is he's given the small business owners the tools, the information on what is expected and what needs to be done. And the other advantage is every small business owner can start working on that today. Some of those things are going to be difficult to come by. Some of the cleaning plans may have to be gone over with third-party vendors. Some offices might have to reorganize their office or reorganize how they do things. But the point is now they have something to do so that when the date rolls around, whether it's May 18th or a different date for a different business, they can be prepared. And that's a huge advantage, because without some sort of a plan or an expectation of what should be done, the governor says you can open. Well, if you can't open safely, how the heck are you supposed to open? So having the tools in place and having the knowledge of what you need to do, I think was imperative. And I think that's what the governor outlined, so that everyone can get to work on doing what they need to do to be ready to open. Employers, and I don't want to keep focusing on employers, because also employees now have a clear expectation of what is expected and what it's going to look like and feel like, so that they can feel confident as well.
Thank you. As emergency management meets every day, right? Every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m.
Yes.
And on the weekends, there's just phone meetings. But during the week, when everybody gets together, there's
Yes.
been a lot of conversation about how to support businesses and support governmental operations as non essential services slowly move toward going online. And the first step in phase one, Lisa, a lot of these are internal mechanisms for the businesses
Yes.
and operations. Is that correct?
Yes, a lot of them are internal. And I think the governor's made it pretty clear that the first businesses to come back online are going to be the businesses that don't have a public interface, meaning they don't have the general public walk in and out of their business on a daily basis. So I think that was the focus there. So these are going to be internal mechanisms on how those private and smaller businesses are going to achieve compliance, meaning they're going to be compliant with the new way of doing business. So that's, I think the governor tipped his hand a little bit. I think we can see that it's going to be the small places without a public interface that are going to be opening up first.
Got it. And as employers and particularly employees, which we're all one or the other, take a look at what this looks like. You're taking a step toward resuming normal workplace activities, not necessarily service of the public in the old traditional ways that we were used to. So
Right.
I'm getting from this, or at least from what you've said, that you're going to still see people working remotely, and you're still going to see virtual meetings. You're still going to see drop offs and pickups, grab and goes. You're not going to see that change in phase one. But what you might see, if I'm not wrong, is more fewer staggered shifts and maybe bringing employees together, socially distancing, cleaning, fogging, sanitizing, and maybe taking a look at their own workspaces and how their
Sure.
public service areas work. Is that right?
Yes, and I think that what's going to change is businesses that were completely closed for a multitude of reasons. I'll try to pick an easy one: small manufacturing. The fact that they were non-essential, and if they weren't manufacturing something that was considered essential, that they just were not there. Those are the types of things that can come back online, provided that they can social distance, provided that sanitation is met. So things like that, you wouldn't have the public going into a manufacturing type of business. Maybe a completely an office type scenario might come back online, such as an insurance agency. Maybe they won't have walk-ins from the public, but they will start to bring people back into their office environment to go to work. I would imagine government, like ourselves and everything else, where so many people are working remotely or not in a physical location, whether it be a town hall or other, are going to start to bring people back into their environments. Maybe the COA is going to start bringing people back in the environment, but not the general public. I think that's the difference we're going to see. We're going to see these businesses start to bring people back in, and some businesses may remain remote. There are some businesses that might have adapted so well to this that not bringing everyone back in as part of their plan. But that's a business specific type of question to answer. So I think it's going to be returning of staff, but not returning of public services. But yeah, pickups, drops and goes. Certainly mail order, mailing out of information, electronic. I know a lot of insurance agencies, I'm just using that as an example because it's an easy one, have gone to electronic documentation. I know that a lot of real estate's gone to electronic documentation of certain things. So we might see a lot more of that coming.
And a question for you, maybe the rep can weigh in also. There's been some conversation about what employers are going to do to support employees who have daycare issues. I mean, right now you've got childcare or early childhood education on pause through June for obvious reasons in terms of, our little folks being able to to resist the impulse to get too close and all of that. So as I know, we've talked a lot about summer camps, but just general day-to-day ability for a mother, a father, a parent who's a caregiver, whoever the caregiver may be, getting back to a physical workplace may be a challenge. And the reason I wanted to throw this back to either of the two of you to weigh in, there are still some daycare centers, early childhood education centers that are open, but they've been currently serving emergency management personnel's families. Is there any conversation or is it just, are they full? Is there any availability?
So those institutions are not full. All the latest data I'm seeing is they're being wildly underutilized, not just underutilized, less than 50% capacity. Some of them even below that. Of course, the guidelines of how many children would be in a particular location, room, classroom, whatever you want to call it, is still going to be limited. My understanding is those different facilities are still, again, wildly under capacity. And again, I can't predict the governor, but here we go, crystal ball time. If I had to predict what the governor is going to do, I think that for people going back to work, that childcare is going to be an issue. He is going to further broaden the scope of who may use the currently open, currently inspected, currently licensed by early childhood education locations to take in those additional children to allow those people to return to work. They're going to be widely the YMCAs and much longer standing, more broad childcare facilities.
Josh, from your district and from Pembroke and all of the folks that you support, are you hearing something similar? Do you have any other news or any new input on that?
Sure. Well, yeah, I think Lisa's spot on. The master predictor. Number one, in terms of we are under capacity. It's important to know that for folks who are essential workers, there is plenty of capacity in our emergency childcare facilities, even in our region here. In terms of the broader issue, obviously, we can't have everyone going back to work if we don't have childcare. That's goes hand in hand. There has been a bit of a push. We've seen some organizations like the Boston Chamber of Commerce has been pushing to reopen childcare centers earlier using the June 1st deadline. I have seen some push around that. It wouldn't surprise me if we saw some modification of the June 29th order that the governor previously gave, because obviously we can't have all these businesses are reopening and then not allowing people to use childcare. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw some sort of tweaks to that. The issue of camps and a lot of summer programming. Are those going to be allowed to operate in any capacity or at all? People need to make decisions about that pretty soon. So I think you're going to see hopefully some guidance about hopefully some more details in the governor's framework that he released yesterday will be forthcoming by Monday.
All right. So just as a follow-up to that, any early leaks on the task force, their work, what they're doing, what they're focusing on, anything you could share?
Nothing really that's not already out there or that I haven't already shared. We're like everyone else. I'm eager to hear more details and to see some urgency here. I know a lot of businesses are struggling, and we need to have a plan in place pretty quick.
So again, sorry, follow up on that. The State House. What is the what's the conversation around the State House, and how is the facility being managed? How are the meetings being held? What are you guys actually doing and managing to do virtually, please?
Sure. So I'm actually not here now, although my background may look like I am. Just like I don't think Lisa's there with those nice fall trees. But no, so we had our, we are meeting regularly. We had a formal session last week. It was an interesting process. We actually were able to stream it online, but then we actually participated via phone. And the reason we use sort of an old school technology for actually voting is because there are, believe it or not, some of my colleagues out in Western Mass who don't have Wi-Fi and can't do Zooms. And in fact, half the phone, being able to call in on a phone is the only way they can really remotely communicate. So that tells us we do have some work to do in terms of our infrastructure. But we did vote, and we did it all. We had PIN numbers, and we would call in, and we would register our vote just with an old-fashioned phone. So that's how we're moving forward right now. We do have another formal session this Wednesday, and I believe the Senate's going to be doing that as well. So that's on the voting side. On the meeting side, it's happening very much on an ongoing basis. In fact, just to give you an example, our bill that I filed because thank you, Sabrina, and all you guys for raising the issue about boards of health. About FEMA flood maps and deadlines was drafted and filed and was just referred to the municipalities committee just this morning. Actually, just got word about that, and so they'll be scheduling a hearing, and it'll be a virtual hearing, and they've been doing them like Zoom kind of hearings. People can also submit testimony via email. And so that process is continuing. And I expect that, we'll have a hearing on that bill. It won't be at the State House. It'll be virtually through the State House. And that's how business is going. That part of the process has gone fairly smoothly and ramped up fairly quickly. The remote voting part took a little more time because there's some technical issues, and that's constitutional issues involved in that. But that is moving forward too. So hopefully that will sort of speed the way for us to get more back to dealing with the budget, because I know that's on everyone's list of concerns as well. But so yeah, we are having our sessions now. In fact, this Wednesday we'll be voting on an information technology bond bill, which is an important thing these days, given our reliance on IT technology. So lots going on.
All right. So, do you forecast again, not to drag out the old well-used crystal ball, but do you think that after the May 18th, phase one introduction of employees back to the workplace, do you see the State House making any moves as an essential governmental operation, just in the background, not necessarily bringing legislators in?
I think, given the fact that we've sort of been able to work out the various kinks and be able to operate now, remotely, I think there won't be a rush to do that, especially for staff, because we don't want staff to have to go in. There are some legislators who are going in, not a ton, but some. But I think in terms of staff, we don't, just like staff at Pembroke Town Hall, we don't want to put anybody in harm's way that we don't have to. So if there are ways that we can operate safely and still conduct public business this way, then I think that will be the process for the short term, just like it may be for Pembroke Town Hall or Duxbury Town Hall and so forth. So we'll see. And obviously, we've had now 2 colleagues who've tested positive who have COVID, and so that is that's an issue as well that we've had all kinds of warning emails about various folks who may have had contact and so forth, and so that's a concern when you have 200 legislators from all over the state congregating in one place. That's probably not the greatest idea right now.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, you guys definitely take in more territory than our smaller towns and suburban communities. Sorry.
Suburban. I like that term, actually.
Suburban. Oh my gosh.
That's a new term.
I guess.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, the new things that come out of COVID, right? So you've referenced back to basics, and I want to throw this to Gretchen, if you don't mind, Gretchen.
Yeah.
You've done some really creative, outside the box thinking in a way that just brings us back in time. It's interesting because we were moving at light speed forward, and your community, the seniors, are generally not the ones that you think of as being light speed forward on technology. You actually were able to take a step back and start servicing the seniors, and by the way, larger swaths of the population, by providing delivery services to the folks who couldn't get to pantries. But you also set up a clothesline as a delivery system for facial coverings, which again, it was just such a creative and obvious back to basics type of a solution. And one of the things that I know we'll be focusing on Thursday on this forum is how to get back to some of those basics when everybody put on pants and nobody drank and we all went to work, and all of the regular garden variety day-to-day routine things of our past that we have to now, under phase one, start to incorporate in our own lives. Because there's the distinction, right? Phase one doesn't necessarily mean you can get your hair done, but it does mean that you have to get your act together and start getting back to at least your workplace, whether that's virtually and remotely if you have the capability, or start working with your employer to have a reentry plan so that the sanitation plan and your office situation can be resolved before any public interaction. But Gretchen, you said earlier some really interesting statistics on that clothesline. Can you talk a little bit about not only that, but some of the other things you've done? They're really great.
Absolutely. So it really is with the seniors back to basics. It's very simple, even with phone calls, that getting back on the phone and calling people. You're not texting anyone. You're not doing things like that. So we've got I refilled it this morning, the clothesline, and we have one on the front of the building and one on the side of the building as you go into the library parking lot. And we're up to about 1,250 masks given out, which is really amazing. And obviously people still want them. People still need them because every day by noontime it's empty. So I'm refilling it, once morning, and first come, first serve. There have been some people donating to that. But more than that, it's just created a sense of community, which I think is really wonderful, like along with the Christmas decor trees that are out on the green. Give people a little hope as did the list that came out yesterday from the governor. We may not know, but that's okay. It's kind of like a teaser, a news teaser. Oh, here we go. We're going to go forward. This is what's going to happen. But we've also started the Pembroke Hope Fund, and I think we're at about $7,300 worth of donations from residents of the town of Pembroke, and it's going 100% to the residents of Pembroke. We've also already made our first payment for someone, so it is 100% resident based, and we do have more applications that we need to sit and take a look at. So it's just that you can't hug anyone now, but if you show them a little kindness and love that way, it's kind of like a hug. And I'm a hugger, so we're all over. You know, once this is done, you're all getting a hug.
All right, Gretchen, you had somebody step up in the kindest way. You had a group of residents all get together and bring eggs to the Council on Aging. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was another back to basics, really beautiful showing from the residents of town.
Yeah, so that was spearheaded by, I call him my deputy egg collector, Bob DeMarzo. And he and some residents of the town arranged for us to, on a weekly basis, get eggs so we could deliver them to the seniors when we do the food pantry delivery. And I'm happy to say that the Firehouse Pantry has reopened, and although the Pembroke Food Pantry has not reopened, we are working in conjunction. Actually, today we're delivering. We're going there to pick up, I think, for 25 residents to deliver food for them. So the food chain here is really key. And, you know, we're still reaching out and calling our older adults, as I had said. And we're just asking them really basic questions every day besides talking to them. You know, how are you feeling? How's your mood? Are you lonely? Do you need groceries? You know, and a big one is, do you have internet access? Because we do have things that are available for them, like yoga classes and mindfulness classes on our Facebook page. And it also gives me a little glimmer to the future, what kind of we need to bring in for classes to help with them. And, you know, are you connecting with your family? Would you like to, you know, connect with other people from the center and maybe have them get in contact with each other? But by like the food pantry, at least these people are getting healthy food every week. And the eggs have been key because eggs have a lot of protein, and it's really been a joy to work with the local farmers.
Thank you, Gretchen. Now, John, you are the person who houses the majority of Gretchen's clients, if we're going to keep it a simple linear transaction, right? What that means is you both support a very similar community. You can roll a lot of veterans into your clientele as well. But up until now, as we talk about things like back to basics and knowing what phase one may look like, we're seeing that there will not be any changes. In fact, I think it's more vigilant to be more aware of social distancing, facial covering, sanitation to your population and in your common areas. So as you move through the phases, do you anticipate any changes in phase one? And what would you like to see from going, you know, through that phase?
Well, Sabrina, you know, actually, I just want to say, Gretchen, great job. You really are doing a wonderful job, and the feedback that I get from my residents is, you know, thumbs up. You know, they love your effort. You're new to this world here in the town of Pembroke, but you've demonstrated a great ability to rise to the challenge, and everybody is truly grateful for that. And getting their groceries delivered and the eggs that they do get. So kudos to the egg factory. I guess, Sabrina, it's ingrained in those that we do house to be vigilant and to be good. They get back to basics because that's how they were raised. Life will continue, you know, for us, given our demographic. I see that the introductory phase being a continuation as to what we're doing right now. The big public spaces, such as a community room, will still be closed off to the public, still just open for the laundry facility and mail. But I really don't see that changing for quite some time, because as my residents would definitely attest, and I'm aware of, their vulnerability isn't going away just because a color changes on Governor Baker's radar. We still need to be vigilant, and they're going to continue to be. And as far as my staff goes, or any staff or any business, whether it's private or in the public sector, we have seen, and it's been borne out, the ability to work remotely. So that'll continue as well. We'll still be closed to the public, but we'll be working full time on a daily basis. But to that point, and one of the concerns raised earlier about childcare, I have staff that do have childcare issues. Given the fact that schools did close and people were forced, to school at home and provide that childcare service, out of necessity, there were no other options. They've also demonstrated an ability to work remotely. So that's going to have a double effect. If they can still work remotely, it's going to be safer for everybody. If they can still work remotely and manage their children, and while their ability to go out and about may open up, for their world, I think that if they're required or they have no other choice but to provide the service of caring for their children every day, I think that the ability has been proven, and that it'll be more manageable as they have more options. Children being able to go out, some type of a social environment, or even be able to travel to businesses that do open up. But I see those as big silver linings. But as far as the progression going through the phases, I would see my population being like they are and venturing out a little bit. But I still think they're going to be very determined to get to the fall and beat this thing.
Very good. That makes a lot of good sense, because to your point, each person has to make decisions that are best for them when they venture out of their homes. And your population in their homes feels safe and secure at the moment. So you really don't want to rock that boat. You want people to feel as confident as they can be. And just some of these changes, and Lisa, you'll point this out, I'm sure. Some of these changes, as we are all getting used to trying to wear a mask, when you're out in public. I mean, I have some student athletes in my house, and I know that just anytime they're on anything more than like a 2-mile run, this is a problem for them to get used to and to adapt. And there are some products out there that come up during emergency management, like gaiters, which are good for athletes, and they, can keep, respiratory droplets in, but allow them to exhale and breathe. But as we all struggle to find that new place for us that works the best, and we're trying, some of it's just an experiment to see what is going to fit us and our lifestyles the best. You have to, Lisa, give guidance to not only your staff and the emergency management team, but to the residents of Pembroke. And you're using a lot of resources that people don't even know about. Your office is 2 people. Your board has 3 people. Your public health nurse stable is smaller than we would probably like it to be. And you're running all of them at full speed. And that can't be necessarily good for longevity. But I think some of the folks at home think, well, town hall's closed, hence I'm not getting whatever. So to Josh's point and John's point, as things start to open back up, we may be closed to the public, but that's just a locked door. There's still people servicing them every day in every other way. I mean, we're running trash stickers out. We're doing all kinds of small and large things for residents everywhere. And Gretchen's point earlier, Lisa, how can you forecast? Not
Sure.
what once we're solid in phase 1 and employees have a good rhythm and accommodations have been made in the building, and then again, we'll get to talk about it next week, but just a little bit of a outside, think ahead. Phase 2. Phase 2, I think, is when you start to see different types of businesses. Am I correct?
Yes.
Phase 1 is about prep, and phase 2 will give us insight as to where we're going. Is that right?
I believe so. And I think there will be some businesses in phase 1, depending on their size and their population density. I think it's really easy to focus on different types of businesses, and that makes it somewhat easy to do. So that's where a lot of people choose to focus because it fits the conversation. But remember, this is a disease. At the end of the day, everyone gets focused on what's going on in the economy and the other things, that this is a disease that spreads from human to human. The less humans, the less spread. It's that simple. And in the case of the facial coverings, which I hope everyone's getting wildly used to, the idea there is to prevent the spread by preventing droplets from leaving your body. Again, the mask's going to do very little for you unless you have an N95, which no one should be using other than medical care professionals and first responders. But other than that, all this is doing is capturing droplets. And as you talked about with the athletes, that catches more droplets with them. But the idea is to get used to the way that it needs to be as safe as possible, and that should be important to everyone. That should be important to people, to employers, to give everyone confidence to move forward, so that we can start to bring back online businesses that will have more human interaction than we currently have today. Right now, we're down to the bare minimum, getting groceries, getting life essentials. And things like that. But we are going to start to bring back on other types of business and other types of human interaction type of business. That's going to be a necessity to get the state open and running again. So I think that part of it is also to get everyone prepared, to give businesses time to get prepared, to bring back those businesses that are of such a size or such a distancing capability because of the nature of their business, that's not going to allow a lot of high level of spread. And I think that's the intention. And I think that, like I said, it's also to get people used to the idea. And then it's also going to be a little bit of a test, quite frankly. Can people do it? Can they do so responsibly? Can businesses do it? Can businesses do so responsibly? And does it work? Obviously, I would expect DPH and the governor's office to be paying a great deal of amount of attention when phase one is implemented to what do the numbers do? Do the numbers go up? Do the numbers go down? Do the numbers stay the same? And I would expect that would be a large part of what they are looking to accomplish, for lack of a better word, or learn during that phase one. And again, everyone keeps forgetting this is a disease, and it's a disease we don't know a whole lot about because it is an emerging infectious disease. We haven't heard that language in a long time, but it is still emerging. We don't know everything about it. We don't have all the answers, and we're learning as we go, as are the scientists and the doctors. So I think it's important to pay attention to the numbers, and to everyone else's point of just open everything up. You don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, that's a little over the top, but to start to open things up and to start to increase those interactions will tell us what the future holds.
Well, it's funny you would mention that, Lisa, because
Wait,
I'm sorry, but you every time and I won't dwell on this, and I really don't want to drop it on you because it's not fair. But every time we listen to a news report or do our hindsight is 2020 by watching what other states are doing, we're hearing about these random offshoots of what this emergent disease is doing after it's already cleared out a section.
Yeah.
So to your point, it's very hard to say this is what's going to happen on this date certain, and then this is what it will look like. If we're going back and revisiting cases from Europe and California and the West Coast, with folks and particularly younger members of the demographic that people thought were going to be more hardy and resistant to an emerging virus. So I won't drop it, but that's one of those more to come teasers that I'm sure Gretchen didn't mean to indicate when she was on before.
Yes.
And just before we go to regular questions from Julie, we have a question here that I think could be for the state rep, and I'm sorry to do that to you right now. But towns right now are grappling with the concept of where does their town meeting fall in a phased reintroduction, right? Quorums are different sizes. In Pembroke, we have a 150-person quorum to open a town meeting, and I know that the mass moderators have put forward some legislation to reduce that number. But the one thing they admit that they can't do anything about is a cap to suddenly put a whistle or blow a foul on the play if 2,000 people show up when you were expecting 38. So in that vein, I don't know if it's being discussed, if there's rumors, if there's conversation, or if there's even legislation being drafted or considered. Can you talk to that before we go to other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Good question. Although having too many people at town meeting has never been a problem, but happy to confront that. But yeah, you're correct. So in fact, I know the town moderator was on your advisory panel last night, and he and I have been in close communication. There is legislation. So number one, we did already pass legislation to allow towns to delay and reschedule and postpone essentially their town meetings every 30 days if they wish, in conjunction with the Board of Selectmen and the town moderator. So that's already in place. The issue of quorums comes up, obviously, because many towns that have open town meeting have a quorum requirement, like Pembroke. And there is legislation that was passed in the Senate and is now in House Ways and Means that would reduce the quorum requirements down to, I believe it's 25%, which is, at least a manageable number to people to have in a space. So that is still pending. That's something that I think that I hope to see passed, hopefully. I know there's a movement also to allow not open town meeting, but elected town meeting like they have in Plymouth to meet remotely. And so that's something that's under consideration. I don't think that's going to be something we'll see for open town meeting because it's just not really feasible. And then you do run into, if too many people want to participate. But reducing the quorum requirements at a local option, obviously not a mandate, but an option for the town to do that is something that is actively being considered, and the Senate has passed and is now pending in the House. And in the moderator and I, we've talked about that. I think there's some amendments having to do with very small towns, allowing them possibly to do remote town meetings. Obviously, Pembroke of population 18,000 and change. That's not something for us, but out in Western Mass, there's towns of 200 or 300 people, and so that might be an option for them. So I think you're going to see some more movement, trying to give a little more flexibility, because obviously we're going to have to have a town meeting at some point, and even being able to delay it 30 days at a time, it still presents the same sort of safety issues and concerns that people may not want to come out and you have trouble meeting the quorum requirement. So potentially lowering the quorum requirement is something that we're working on right now. So that's probably the best solution that I can think of that we could come up with that would allow us to move forward in a practical way and still have our town meeting within some near time frame.
Thank you. I know it's been such a struggle just trying to get around logistics. I mean, we're so used to higher level thinking that when you drill right into it, how do you actually accommodate distance, make sure everybody's heard? Some of the early things tossed around were multiple overflow rooms with cameras and TVs and moderator with multiple monitors, and it was unwieldy, to say the least. And I know that a bunch of other questions have come in. So Julie, can you share some of those?
Sure. Thank you, Sabrina. This has been really great. Lots of great information. Josh, probably between you and Sabrina, you could field this one. There's quite a few questions about each town's budget. And we're hearing this from all of our towns. Every city, every town, every municipality is going to be suffering a massive shortfall. What do you know about what the federal government can do that could actually come down to the state level and then come down to the individual towns and municipalities?
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of the federal level, I mean, the CARES Act has already included some funding for different aspects of state government and county and local government as well. We are sort of waiting to see what's going to happen with this fourth iteration, though, of the CARES Act. There's been a lot of discussion. I know some of our congressmen, congresswomen have been talking about this, of including some significant amount of aid, up to the number I heard was up to $2 trillion in aid for state and local governments directly, because we all realize that Massachusetts is among the the handful of states that have been hardest hit by this, and that trickles down to the state and obviously down to the local level as well. We're dealing with our own shortfall at the state level of anywhere from $2 to $6 billion. It's still kind of a moving target at this point, and we don't know quite. Have we reached the bottom yet? Are we climbing back up? Or are we still going down? It's hard to know right now. And obviously, our local towns are in the same boat. Number one, they rely on local aid from the state, which we hope will be held harmless, but we can't say that for sure. And then I also rely on local receipts, and those are certainly going to be hit. And certainly people aren't going to be spending as much on, renovations and such, and building permits and all the kinds of revenues that towns depend on. So I don't have a great answer right at this point about what Congress is going to do. But we're hopeful. Fingers crossed that they will. I know there's some partisan bickering and so forth, but hopefully they'll agree and pass the fourth iteration of this CARES Act to include some more direct funding for state and local governments, because we definitely need that. We have in Massachusetts, we have a rainy day fund, a stabilization fund over $3 billion, and that will certainly help and maybe puts us in a better position than some other states that haven't built up that kind of stabilization fund. But that's certainly not going to that would get eaten up overnight if we didn't have any federal assistance. So we definitely are counting and hoping that the federal government will provide additional assistance to the state and in turn our local municipalities. So time will tell. We're hopeful we'll have news on that soon. But like many of you, we're watching this very carefully.
And Sabrina, did you want to weigh in on that at all? Where you had, I know you had an advisory meeting last night, and this was one of the major topics.
Please.
What are some of the options that you're weighing in as a town?
Well, everything Josh just said was brought forward last night by the town accountant, and he was there representing the finance team. And one of the things that I could see, and we can all feel, is that not frustration, but that want for more solid information. People want tangibles. They want to start rebuilding a plan. They want to take a look at a proactive step, whatever it is. They just want to get started. And they had to be advisory had a really very good conversation with the finance team last night about the fact that, to Josh's point, these numbers haven't landed yet. These are moving targets. It's hard to nail them down and present a budget for you today that's based on revenues that are changing every possible day. Is recovery coming? When is recovery coming? Are we going to see an uptick in things like the missing meals tax? I mean, Pembroke is affected by everything Josh said and more. And we're grateful for all of the work that you're doing. But any additional stream is going to be helpful. And it was reported last night that Pembroke is prepared to drop an application to the county. Plymouth County is the recipient of our portion, the county's portion of the CARES Act funding that was dispersed by the federal government. So we're waiting for a little bit more in terms of guidance documents, but our data's together, our outline's prepared, the application's been roughed in, and now we just want to fine tune it with whatever guidance documents come out of the county. And that could lead. Go ahead, Josh.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sabrina. I thought but yeah, so that's actually I didn't touch on that, but that's the revenue that we've already received that Plymouth County is managing for through the CARES Act, $90 million. That's actually a sort of a ray of sunshine, a ray of good news, I guess, in all of this, is that there will be funds coming back to the towns in Plymouth County because of that maybe some other towns and other counties aren't going to see. So Pembroke is in line, and I believe, there's going to be guidance from the county coming out this week with a deadline, for the first round of reimbursements. That'll be later this month. So at some point, I expect by the end of the month or early into June, we'll see our first funds back from the county through, from the federal government through the county for costs that we've already incurred for COVID. And that'll be an ongoing source of reimbursements through essentially through the fall and into December. So that is, that's obviously not going to solve all of our plug all of our holes, but it will provide some revenue to cover our expenses that we've incurred to help out. So that's a little bit of good news. And the first funds from that, and I know the accountant Mike Buckley and I have chatted, and I know he has with all of you guys about that process and getting in your expenses from every department to make sure that we're getting our full share of expenditures covered. So that's something that I expect will have some funds back to the town, in fairly short order.
Did you have anything else to add to that, Sabrina?
Everything Josh just said. Plus,
my brilliance just covered it, right?
You too, really.
It's the best partnership ever.
Absolutely.
So I think just to report from a local level and just keep it back to what we're seeing is you have these weighted expenses in a few categories. You have some lost payroll that you're trying to recover and recoup and deploy, right? You're trying to figure out how to handle that particular expense that's COVID related. You had an interruption of service. Then you have a whole stream of technology. What did you have to implement? What could you afford to implement? Because remember, reimbursements are about what you spent and you would like to recover. So how much of our technological advances were we able to, actually put in place in phase one or round one, excuse me. I don't want to get confused with phases and rounds. In round one. And then the third item is what PPE, what support, what kind of, investments did you have to make in foggers and solutions and masks and gloves and Tyvek suits? And when you start compiling all of that data together, you come together with a picture, right? That's weighted in one way or another. And you're saying to yourself, okay, here are our expenses. If we can start to be reimbursed for those, we can make additional investments in some of these things that we're looking to offset, right? Because this is going to be a longer duration event. Until a vaccine comes out, you're working with different governmental operations that are coming back online. and you're supporting residents, and you understand that excise tax is down and meals tax is down. So these revenue streams that you were counting on to balance a budget now aren't there, or they're dramatically reduced. So you start a hope fund, you get great staff behind it, you get great legislators to promote it, and you all come together and you do what you can to try to fight your way through it. And it's about having a finance team in place that partners with the legislators and with our advocates outside of Pembroke to come together with a plan that can move this town forward and see less loss. Because lost revenue does that to a household, to a business, or to a government, you know. So you're going to start to see across the country and across the Commonwealth, different towns popping up or cities popping up with issues. And Pembroke wants to be as proactive as possible. But you can't do that alone. You need a partner.
Right, great. Thank you. And it's really wonderful as a Pembroke resident myself to know that we have all of you that are just continuously talking through all the potential what ifs and the old crystal ball. None of us have it, but you're trying to do plan A, plan B, plan C, if this, then that, which is really great. A bunch of you mentioned today the 4-phase approach to the governor's opening. And if you do go to mass.gov, and if my control room could just bring this up, there's just actually three slides, which makes it really easy to see. These are the 4 phases that are opening. And then this talks about the social guidance, the mandatory safety standards, and the sector-specific safety standards. And the third is actually giving some protocols. So thank you, control room. So that is really easy for people to follow. And the watchword really has to be patience, because we have to do this. Take a breath, do it slowly, do it right. That's what I'm hearing. Is that true, Sabrina? Is that really our watchword right now?
Absolutely. And you're going to hear a lot of that being messaged and packaged this week. In fact, Thursday, when we have on the interim chief of the fire department, the operations lieutenant for the police department, we're going to start to have conversations with Lisa about what our back to basics work amongst ourselves while we're being patient and while we're taking those first steps out for Gretchen and John's community, as we start to look at tentative things we can do that are safe for us, and how does that interact with other people. We have to start thinking basically, because we have to remember all of the best practices that we've put aside to quarantine and what things we may have lost or put off in terms of our habits and our behaviors. And how do we bring those together with some of the new normals that we're going to start seeing as we move through our cities and towns? So yes, patience, Julie, and honestly, Pembroke has been doing a great job. And one of the things that I can't state enough, and I stole it from the deputy chief, right? I just want to thank the residents. They've done a beautiful job. It's going to require a little bit more as we start to walk out of it, not sprint, but patience and fortitude. Lisa,
Great.
anything last that you want to throw in?
No, patience is a good word, but not just patience that we're moving forward. But it would be to ask the public to be kind to the businesses as they open up. I think, unfortunately, on Cape Cod, we saw an example of not kindness, which is incredibly sad if you're familiar with the iconic ice cream shop down there and the problems they had. The public needs to be patient, both as employees, employers, and customers. This is not business as usual. And it's going to be a challenge for every business as they open. So that my one hope would be everyone takes a deep breath. We will all figure it out. We will all adapt and move on. But before getting upset that everyone stops and takes a moment to think, an ice cream shop doesn't know how to do social distancing. Anyone who's been to Dairy Twist knows in the past that social distancing was something never done at Dairy Twist, and they're doing it pretty successfully right now. So as these different businesses come online, stop, take a breath. Whether you're the employer frustrated with your employees, whether you're an employee frustrated with an employer, or whether you're a customer of a business frustrated that you're not getting immediate response or the response that you want. Everyone's got to work their way through these. So if everyone stops and takes a moment and realizes the employer's never faced this situation, the employee has never faced the situation, and nor has the customer faced this situation before, then we just remind ourselves all that before we react. Think of a solution and then react together.
Good point. And Lisa, to that point, and Sabrina, also to yours, I know here at PACTV, we've been open the whole time, but not to the public, but so that we can do these things and serve our 4 towns. And it really becomes habit. The social distancing, the wearing the masks, the constantly washing and cleaning surfaces, it just becomes part of your daily routine. It's not horrible. You get used to it. You can get used to anything. And I think the one thing it has really done for us is you slow down and you think about stuff before you do it. And that's not always a bad thing. And that's what I want to end
No.
with. Sabrina, go ahead.
No, and I just wanted to throw out there, that's why phase one could be valuable.
Yeah.
Some people are looking at the shortcomings involved in phase one, but I don't get to do X, right? But one of the things you just hit on, Julie, and it's important to remember, is some folks have been in a stay-at-home advisory, self-quarantining, and they haven't been having an opportunity to get back into the workplace, with the doors closed to the public, and put on the mask and get comfortable with it and start working around other people, maintaining distance and practicing hygiene. So phase one has value to a lot of people in this community. And we really need to remember, to Lisa's point, as these phases move, they may not move fast enough for what we're looking for, what our end goal is, but every step forward is a piece of progress. And in order to not screw it up and send us right back into the original closure, we all need to do what you've indicated, what Lisa's indicated, what the entire panel's indicated, and that's be patient and be vigilant and be self-responsible.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sabrina. This was a wonderful forum today. Really, really good. As you can see, we date stamp these each day because information changes on a daily basis. We will see you again on Thursday at 9 o'clock with a wonderful panel that you always bring. I know there will be some questions about testing on Thursday, so if maybe we could have some information on that for that day, that would be great. Sabrina, thank you so much. Thank you all the guests. We've really appreciated it. If you want to watch this again, go to pactv.org/Pembroke. Thank you, and we'll see you on Thursday.